When a man says, "I've never met anyone like you before," it can stop you in your tracks. It feels special. It feels personal. It hits something deep because we all want to be seen as unique, unforgettable, and unlike anyone else. This phrase is one of the most emotionally charged things a man can say when he's drawn to you. But like many powerful phrases, it can carry two entirely different meanings, one sincere and one strategic. And learning how to decode which one you're hearing is essential to understanding his true intentions. At face value, this phrase sounds romantic, almost cinematic. It implies that out of everyone he's known, you're different. You've left an impression. You've stirred something in him that others haven't. And that can absolutely be true. Sometimes a man encounters a woman who challenges him, inspires him, listens differently, carries herself with emotional intelligence, or simply shows up in his life at a moment when he's ready to recognize something meaningful. In those cases, this phrase isn't just flattery, it's the emotional reaction of someone whose view of connection has genuinely shifted because of you. He's not comparing you to others as a tactic. He's acknowledging that you've awakened something deeper in him. But that's only half the story. There's also the other version of this phrase, the one that sounds the same but comes with a hidden intention. It's the version spoken when a man wants something but isn't necessarily ready to give something real in return. It can be used to disarm you, to rush intimacy, to lower your defenses. This kind of man might not even be aware that he's doing it. He might not be malicious, but he knows that by saying this, he pulls you into an emotional space where you're more likely to open up, invest, and let your guard down. Because let's be honest, when someone tells us we're rare or one of a kind, we want to believe them. That's why context is everything. If a man says, "I've never met anyone like you before," and backs it up with effort, consistency, and integrity, then it's likely a sincere reflection of how he feels. He doesn't just say it and disappear. He shows up. He asks real questions. He makes time for you without you chasing him. He remembers what matters to you. He follows through. His actions begin to paint a picture of someone who truly values what makes you unique, not just someone using pretty words to get emotional closeness on fast forward. On the other hand, if he says it too early, say on the second date, or even before you've had a chance to deeply connect, that's a red flag. It might feel flattering, but it's premature. How could he know you're unlike anyone else when he's barely scratched the surface of who you are? In those moments, the phrase often reveals more about him than about you. It may mean he's projecting a fantasy onto you, seeing what he wants to see instead of who you really are. Or worse, it could be a subtle tactic to manipulate your emotions and build false security.
You also have to pay attention to what happens next. Does he continue to get to know you layer by layer with patience and curiosity? Or does he use that one line to shortcut the vulnerability building process, hoping it earns him emotional intimacy or even physical access before real trust is established? A man who truly sees you as unique doesn't just say it, he treats you like someone worth knowing slowly, deeply, and with full attention. He listens more than he talks. He respects your pace. He's not just intoxicated by the idea of you, he's interested in the truth of you. This phrase also reveals something else, the stage of emotional maturity a man is in. A mature man who knows himself and what he's looking for won't throw that sentence around lightly. He understands the weight of words. So if he says it, it's usually after witnessing your character, your values, your energy, not just your appearance or charm. But an emotionally unavailable man might use the phrase to simulate emotional depth to say something that sounds profound without actually investing anything real behind it. It's like writing a check his emotional maturity can't cash. The key is not to get swept away by the line itself. Pay attention to the rhythm between his words and his behavior. Are they in sync, or are you hearing promises that reality doesn't match? The phrase should never be what convinces you of his intentions. It should be something that simply confirms what his actions have already shown you. If it's sincere, you'll already feel it in how he treats you. The words just put a name to what he's already demonstrating. So when a man says, "I've never met anyone like you before," don't respond from a place of emotional hunger. Respond from a place of emotional intelligence. Smile, say thank you, but don't build your hopes on words alone. Watch what follows. Observe who he is when things aren't easy, when he's not trying to impress, when you hold a boundary. That's when the truth of his intentions will show, because the phrase, "I've never met anyone like you before," can either be the start of something real, or just another line from a man who's mastered the performance of intimacy without ever truly showing up for it. And the difference lies not in what he says, but in what he proves. There's a quiet intimacy in the phrase, "I was thinking about you." It's not dramatic. It doesn't come with fireworks or emotional declarations. But in many ways, this simple line carries more emotional weight than any grand romantic gesture. When someone tells you they've been thinking about you, it means you're present in their world even when you're not in the room. And in the early stages of attraction or relationship building, that presence, mental, emotional, internal, means everything. When a man says, "I was thinking about you," it shows that his interest in you isn't limited to convenience or proximity. It's not just about when you're texting, calling, or sitting across from him. It means something about you lingers. You made a mark, whether it's your voice, your opinions, your laughter, or the energy you brought into a moment with him. And he's carrying that impression with him into his day. This kind of thinking is emotional proof that you've started to occupy space in his mental and emotional landscape. But like any powerful phrase, its meaning is found in how and why it's said. Sometimes this line is shared spontaneously, with no expectation or agenda. It's simply a reflection of what's true. Maybe he heard a song that reminded him of you. Maybe he drove past a place you mentioned once. Maybe something funny happened at work, and you were the first person who came to mind. When this phrase is delivered that way, it feels honest, casual, even a little vulnerable. It means you're not just someone he interacts with, you're becoming someone who matters to his internal world. However, sometimes the phrase can come at suspiciously convenient times, when he wants to re-enter your life after going quiet, or when he's hoping to reignite your attention without doing the work to build a deeper connection. "I was thinking about you" can also be used as a breadcrumb, a small emotional deposit meant to keep you hooked without offering anything substantial in return. This is especially true when it's followed by nothing. No phone call, no question about you, no real engagement, just a floating message designed to stir your emotions without any intention behind it. That's why tone, timing, and consistency matter. Is he saying it during a random part of the day because something genuinely reminded him of you? Or is it always late at night, when he's alone or bored or looking for a little attention? Does he follow it up by asking how you've been, wanting to connect, showing curiosity about your life, or does the conversation drop off after you respond? A man who is genuinely thinking about you isn't just trying to spark your attention, he wants to build something. He's not using the phrase as a tool. He's expressing a truth that you've started to live in the back of his mind in quiet ways, and he's reaching out to close the gap between that internal presence and real-world interaction. It means he misses hearing from you, not just for what you give him, but for who you are. Your words, your thoughts, your company, they've made an impact, and now there's a space that feels a little emptier without your voice filling it. You'll also notice something deeper in a man who means it. He won't just say, "I was thinking about you" once. He'll reach out consistently. He'll remember small things you said and follow up on them. He'll send you something that reminded him of you, a song, a meme, a random story that connects back to something you shared. His thoughts won't live in isolation, they'll translate into action. And in that way, "I was thinking about you" becomes more than a phrase. It becomes a sign of emotional continuity. You're not someone he forgets. When the moment ends, you're someone he carries with him. But if this line is used inconsistently or always as a way to pull you back in when you're drifting away, that's something to pay attention to. It might mean he enjoys the emotional high of reconnecting with you, but lacks the emotional depth to sustain anything long term. In those cases, the phrase is more about his needs, not his desire to genuinely know or invest in you. There's also another dimension to this phrase that often goes unnoticed: vulnerability. For many men, saying, "I was thinking about you," is not easy. It implies emotional exposure. It's a way of saying, "You've taken up space in my mind, and I don't have full control over it." That's not something men say unless they're starting to feel something real. So if a man who typically keeps his emotions guarded begins saying this with sincerity and openness, it's worth noting. He may be letting you into his emotional life in a way that he doesn't do lightly. Ultimately, "I was thinking about you" is only as meaningful as the actions that follow it. Does he reach out just to make you feel flattered, or does he follow through, showing you with consistency that you're not a passing thought, but a priority? Let your emotional intelligence be your guide. Appreciate the phrase, but observe the patterns. Listen to what he says, but trust what he does. The men who mean it will show up not just in text messages or random moments of affection, they'll show up in the dating, a rhythm of your connection. And when a man shows up for you with both words and effort, that's when you know you're not just being thought about, you're being valued. When a man says, "I don't know what it is about you," it's a moment of raw, unfiltered truth, a confession of something he doesn't yet fully understand. This phrase often slips out when logic fails to explain the way he feels. It means you've tapped into a part of him that isn't based on checklists, appearances, or convenience. It's emotional. It's subconscious. It's powerful, and that's what makes this phrase so magnetic, because it tells you that he's experiencing an attraction to you that goes beyond the obvious, and he's trying to make sense of it in real time. There's something deeply human about being so drawn to someone that you can't explain it. It's not that you're the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. It's not that you said all the right things. It's not even necessarily because you've done anything extraordinary. It's because you've stirred something deeper. When he says, "I don't know what it is about you," what he really means is, "I feel something when I'm with you that I don't feel with other people, and I can't quite put my finger on why." That mystery becomes addictive. That unnameable quality you bring, whether it's your energy, your authenticity, your depth, or your emotional presence, becomes the very thing that keeps you in his mind when you're not around. This kind of attraction is often the most enduring. It's not built on superficial compatibility, but on resonance. It's when the way you carry yourself makes him feel more connected to himself. Maybe you listen in a way others don't. Maybe you don't rush to fill silence, and that calm becomes a space where he feels safe. Maybe your laughter is unfiltered, and it reminds him of something he forgot he missed. Whatever it is, it pulls on something he didn't even realize he needed. That's the type of connection people remember and often spend years chasing without even knowing what they're looking for. But there's something else hiding inside this phrase, a kind of emotional disarmament. Because in saying, "I don't know what it is about you," he's also admitting that he doesn't feel fully in control. He's admitting that you've slipped past his defenses, that you've impacted him in a way he didn't plan for. And that's significant because many men operate with a kind of emotional caution even if they don't show it. They protect themselves, they compartmentalize, but this phrase, it signals the opposite. It signals that you've touched something in him he wasn't guarding against. And now he's left to wonder why you've affected him this much, this fast, this deeply. That emotional vulnerability is rare. It's not the kind of thing that comes from someone trying to play games or manipulate. In fact, if a man is emotionally avoidant or not used to real intimacy, he might feel a little unsettled by this feeling. He may pull back at times, confused by how much he feels around you without being able to label or control it. That's not always a bad sign. It often means the connection is real, not calculated. And real connections scare people before they ground them. They require emotional courage, so if he keeps showing up even while saying, "I don't know what it is about you," it's because he's choosing to lean into that uncertainty, and that's a powerful thing. Now, while this phrase can be deeply sincere, it's also important to pay attention to how it's used. If it's accompanied by ongoing effort, curiosity, and emotional investment, it means he's being pulled toward you by something authentic. But if it's said in isolation, without any follow-through, if it becomes a romantic sounding phrase he drops to keep your attention without backing it up with real presence, then it can just be another form of emotional bait. So look beyond the words. What does he do with the feeling he claims to have? Is he taking time to get to know you? Is he trying to understand you, or just reacting to the way you make him feel? Another layer to this phrase is that it reveals your impact. It confirms that you've made a lasting emotional impression not because you're trying, but because you're being. Often, the women who hear this phrase aren't the loudest in the room. They're not bending over backwards to impress. They're just showing up fully as themselves, grounded, confident, curious, kind, and that self-possession becomes incredibly attractive. Men pick up on that. They may not always be able to articulate what draws them in, but they feel it. And that feeling keeps echoing long after the conversation ends. So when you hear, "I don't know what it is about you," don't dismiss it as a vague compliment. Listen to what it says underneath. It's a signal that you've entered someone's emotional radar in a meaningful way. And if his actions align with that statement, if he's consistent, respectful, and invested, then you know it's not just a feeling he had. It's a realization that he's ready to explore, and maybe even a foundation for something deeper. Because at the end of the day, people remember the ones they can't explain, the ones who stirred something honest and unfiltered inside them. And if you've become that person, you're not just a moment. You're a memory in the making. There are many ways a man can express affection, interest, and connection, some subtle, some bold. But when he says, "I'm glad you're in my life," he's not just expressing interest, he's expressing value. This phrase is often overlooked for its simplicity, but it is one of the most meaningful indicators of where you truly stand in someone's emotional world. It's a quiet acknowledgement that your presence matters not just romantically, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and sometimes even spiritually. It's an admission that your existence is adding to his, making it better, lighter, more grounded, or more inspired. When a man says, "I'm glad you're in my life," it signals something important, appreciation, and appreciation is different from attraction. You can be attracted to many people in passing, but appreciation sticks. It has depth. It comes after observing your character, seeing how you carry yourself, watching how you handle conversations, challenges, kindness, or chaos. It's a phrase that indicates he's not just reacting to the surface, he's been paying attention. And what he's noticed, he values. You've made a mark. You've created a space in his life where your presence has become a positive force. That's no small thing. This expression is often a sign that something has shifted, that he's moved from just liking you to genuinely respecting and needing your presence. He may say it after a difficult moment when your support meant something more than you realized. He may say it when you weren't trying to impress him, but just showed up fully as yourself, listening, laughing, or offering a moment of honesty. That's the beauty of this phrase. It doesn't always come in the highlight reel moments. Often, it's in the quiet in-betweens where someone realizes how deeply you're woven into their day-to-day thoughts and emotions. This is also one of the few phrases that opens a man's emotional door not wide open, but just enough for you to see that you've gotten past his walls. A lot of men are cautious with emotional language, especially when it suggests dependency or vulnerability. So when he says he's glad you're in his life, he's admitting that your presence is no longer neutral. You matter. You influence how he feels. That's significant. It means you're no longer interchangeable. You've become someone who anchors him in ways he's beginning to recognize, but as with any phrase, context is everything. There's a genuine version of this and there's a performative one. Some people will say, "I'm glad you're in my life," to keep you emotionally close without offering real intimacy or commitment. In those cases, the words sound nice, but they don't lead anywhere. There's no consistency, no deeper actions to show you're truly valued. So you have to ask, is he backing this up with presence, effort, and care? Or is it a warm blanket of words thrown over a cold connection? The most authentic delivery of this phrase always comes with follow-through. You'll notice him making more time for you, being more emotionally available, including you in things that matter to him, sharing parts of his life that aren't just surface level, and maybe most importantly, listening when you speak. When someone values you, they listen differently. They remember things, they ask questions. They don't just hear you, they absorb you. That's what being glad someone is in your life actually looks like when it's real. And here's the secret. When a man says this and means it, he's testing the waters of emotional intimacy. He's trying to see if you feel the same, if you're as anchored in this connection as he is, because that phrase isn't just about him, it's a subtle invitation. A bridge, he's letting you know that you matter, and he's silently hoping that you'll meet him there in appreciation, in vulnerability, in value. This is why your response matters just as much as his words. If you feel the same, let your energy show it, not in overexcitement, but in reciprocation. Appreciation is a two-way street. When it flows naturally, it becomes a feedback loop of emotional security. You feel good being seen, he feels safe being open, and together you move into deeper, more connected territory. That's how foundations for real love are built, not just through attraction or chemistry, but through mutual acknowledgement of emotional impact. Sometimes this phrase is said quietly in a moment of stillness, or at the end of a long conversation, or after sharing something meaningful, and that's part of its power. It doesn't need to be shouted. It doesn't need to be surrounded by theatrics. It lands softly and stays, because when someone says, "I'm glad you're in my life," they're telling you they've noticed your value, even in the little things. They're letting you know that your existence has changed their emotional landscape for the better. That kind of connection is rare, and when you hear those words sincerely, don't overlook them. They might be the clearest sign that you've not only captured someone's attention, but you've touched something deeper, something lasting, something real. When a man says, "I miss talking to you," he isn't just telling you he missed a conversation. He's revealing that something about the connection you shared lingers in his mind, and its absence is now felt. In a world filled with small talk, surface-level interactions, and constant digital noise, this statement rises above the ordinary. It shows that your communication wasn't just filling time, it was meaningful. It had an emotional impact that now leaves a void when it's gone. And more than anything, it's a subtle form of vulnerability, a man expressing not just a thought, but a need. When he says this, it's rarely about logistics. He's not just saying, "I haven't heard from you in a while," or "let's catch up." He's telling you that something was different when you talked. That something about your energy, your words, the space you created for him, even unconsciously, became a comfort, a spark, or a refuge. Men, like anyone else, crave understanding, but they're often conditioned not to voice that openly. So when he expresses that he misses talking to you, he's revealing a part of himself he might not usually expose, a part that feels more grounded, more alive, or more seen when you're present. There's something deeply flattering in being missed for your mind, for your voice, for the way you listen. That's not about physical attraction. It's not about performance. It's about the emotional fingerprint you left behind. Whether you realize it or not, when you spoke with him in texts, in calls, in person, you created a kind of emotional presence that stuck. And now he's aware of that gap. He feels it. Maybe he's tried to replace it with other conversations, other distractions, but they didn't feel the same. That's what drives this kind of phrase. It's not always planned. It comes from noticing the absence of something real. What makes this especially powerful is that men often don't articulate emotional longing in clear terms. They might act aloof, they might even go quiet for a while, but if they circle back and say, "I miss talking to you," you can be sure there's something deeper going on. It's not just nostalgia, it's a breadcrumb of emotional attachment. A sign that, even if things ended or drifted, you still occupy emotional real estate in his heart and mind. That kind of impact doesn't fade quickly. Of course, not all versions of this phrase are sincere. Some people use "I miss talking to you" as a way to reopen a door they didn't value when it was open. It can be used manipulatively to stir old emotions or test the waters of access. That's why you have to listen with more than your ears. Ask yourself, does this statement come with effort, with real presence, with accountability? If someone misses talking to you but doesn't make any real effort to reconnect beyond sending the phrase, that's not missing, that's poking. That's seeing if the door still opens, and you deserve more than that. But when it is genuine, when it's spoken by someone who truly valued your presence, this phrase becomes one of the purest forms of emotional honesty. It tells you that, even if time has passed or circumstances have changed, the bond you shared meant something. It left an emotional imprint that can't be easily replaced. That kind of connection, the kind built on shared laughs, long conversations, mutual vulnerability, doesn't happen every day. And when someone misses that, it's because they know what they had when they were talking to you was rare. What's also important to notice is when a man says this, timing reveals intent. If he says it after a fight, it might be a peace offering a way to express that he values your connection more than his ego. If he says it after a long silence, it may be a moment of self-awareness, realizing that your absence wasn't as casual as he pretended it was. And if he says it out of the blue, it may be because he's been silently thinking about you and finally decided to break through his own pride or hesitation to let you know you're still on his mind. Responding to this phrase takes discernment. If you feel the same, if you miss the connection too, then this can be an opportunity to reopen the conversation in a healthier, deeper way. But if you know the person saying it hasn't grown or isn't showing up with the consistency you need, then it's okay to recognize the emotional pull without letting it pull you backward. Missing someone doesn't always mean they belong in your present. Ultimately, "I miss talking to you" is a phrase that bridges memory and emotion. It shows that your presence was felt not just while you were there, but even more so once you were gone. And that's the true test of emotional impact, when someone realizes the connection they shared with you wasn't ordinary, it was real. And now, in the quiet spaces of their life, they find themselves wishing for it again, not because they're lonely, but because you made them feel something they can't forget. When a man says, "No one gets me like you do," you've reached a rare space in his emotional world. This isn't something said lightly or often. It's not about shared hobbies or preferences. It's not even necessarily about time spent together. It's about connection, deep, rare, and resonant connection. He's telling you that somehow, through the way you speak, listen, understand, or even remain silent, you've made him feel seen, and not just in a surface-level way, but in the way that matters in the corners of himself that he usually keeps hidden or misunderstood. Many men go through life feeling like they need to wear armor. They're expected to be strong, capable, composed, and often that comes with the silent burden of not being emotionally transparent. They're discouraged from expressing fear, vulnerability, doubt, or even tenderness. So when someone, especially a woman, comes along and peels through those layers without judgment, something powerful happens. He begins to let that armor down, not because you asked him to, but because you created the space where he no longer felt he needed it. This phrase, "no one gets me like you do," is not about being perfect or always saying the right thing. It's about emotional intelligence. It's about empathy. It's about your ability to read what's not being said, to respond not just with advice, but with presence. Maybe you noticed when he was quiet and didn't pressure him, just sat with him. Maybe you heard what he said and still asked, "But how did that feel for you?" Maybe you laughed at things no one else did. Or maybe you gave him feedback no one else had the courage to give, but you gave it with kindness and care. Whatever it was, you saw him not the role he plays, not the performance he puts on, but the raw, real human beneath all of it. What's unique about this phrase is how much it says with so little. It communicates trust. It shows he believes you understand him not in a romanticized, fantasy kind of way, but in the grounded way where his mess doesn't scare you, where his complexity doesn't drive you away. It's an acknowledgement that you've earned a place in his life that others haven't, a place where he doesn't feel judged, a place where he feels emotionally safe. And that kind of space, that's not just desired, it's craved, especially by someone who's not used to having it. It's also important to understand the weight behind this statement. When a man says it, he may not be asking for anything directly, but emotionally, he's drawing closer. He's signaling that there's a bond here worth protecting, maybe even deepening, because feeling gotten is one of the most grounding human experiences. When we feel seen, we feel loved. When we feel understood, we feel connected. And when someone recognizes that we truly get them, they often begin to trust us with more. More of their thoughts, more of their stories, more of their emotions. It opens the door to intimacy that's not just physical but soulful. But with this phrase also comes responsibility. When someone tells you you're the one who gets them, they're giving you access to their emotional world, sometimes more than they've given anyone else. That trust should be honored, not manipulated. It's not a license to control or to expect more than they're ready to give. It's a call to continue showing up as that safe space, to continue listening without rushing, to continue honoring their depth even when it's inconvenient, because what he's saying is, "I feel like I don't have to pretend with you." And that's sacred ground. However, discernment is still necessary. There are some who will use this kind of language to maintain emotional closeness without providing real relationship depth. They'll enjoy being gotten, but won't step forward with the same effort. They'll lean on your emotional understanding while withholding their own. In those cases, this phrase can become a trap, a way to keep you emotionally invested while they stay emotionally distant. That's why it's essential to watch for actions, not just words. If a man says, "No one gets me like you do," but avoids real growth, vulnerability, or showing up consistently, you're not his safe space. You're his emotional crutch, and that's not the same thing. But when it's real, when this phrase is part of a growing, mutual connection, it's one of the most honest and beautiful compliments you can receive. It means you've created something rare, a place in his world where he doesn't feel alone, a mirror where he sees himself clearly and still feels accepted. It means your presence brings him closer to his true self, not farther away. That's not just attractive, that's unforgettable. So when you hear "no one gets me like you do," don't brush it off. Let it sink in. Let it remind you of the power of being emotionally intelligent, grounded, and present. Let it show you that the greatest connections are not always forged through grand gestures or perfect words, but through being a steady, compassionate presence in someone's life. And if he truly means it, if his actions echo his words, then you've likely touched a place in him that no one else has. And that is the kind of bond that can't be faked, forgotten, or easily replaced.